You're listening to the Artist Athlete, episode 110, part 2. This podcast is dedicated to Circus. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for outsiders to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey friends, fans, and foes, I'm Shannon McKenna. I'm the host of the Artist Athlete podcast and the founder of theartistathlete.com. The episode this week is part 2 of an interview that I did with Dr. Jodie Richardson, who is a eating disorder specialist specializing in circus performers, ballet dancers, and other Olympic level athletes. If you haven't heard part 1 yet, go back and listen to part 1 first, because I had to split this interview up for people's attention spans and my own sanity. It's a little tricky because we just jump right into it. Literally my first question is can you be cured of an eating disorder? So if you haven't had kind of the warm up of part 1, it might be a little jarring to just be oh, we're doing this. Okay, let's get into it. So give yourself the cuddle time of part 1, come back, listen to part 2. Before I start this, shout out to my Patreons. They're probably not listening to this because all the Patreons got this interview in its entirety, even with parts that we had to cut out for time purposes and other things. They got it all last week. So I always look out for my Patreons first. Patreon.com/theartistathlete is the place to go to get all that extra content, all that information. It's really the only way that I keep this running for everybody. So patreon.com/theartistathlete. Shout out to them, even though they're not listening, because they got the full episode of Dr. Jodie Richardson. And now you're going to hear it too, no matter who you are in the world. It's coming at you. Here's part 2 of my interview with Jodie Richardson. Do you believe that you can ever be truly cured of an eating disorder?
Yeah, so everybody asks that question. That's a great question. I'm glad you're asking because I swear it comes up all the time.
I'm sure, yeah.
And there are definitely people who say oh, I'll never be cured of my eating disorder. It never goes away. And I mean, my feeling is, of course, that that's not true. But I do think that, there's a certain self-awareness that we have to have about ourselves for our life.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm anxious and I have panic attacks, can I get cured from my panic disorder? Sure. It means that I don't have really panic attacks that come up, out of the blue very often. I might still have a few. I might have none at all. But I would know that there might be certain things I don't know, drinking too much, being really hungover, and then drinking a bunch of coffee, and then, something that could be not so good to do for myself because I'm a bit vulnerable. And I'd say it's the same thing with eating disorders. I think you're better when you get to a point where you're I would never give up this life for that, because you have to give up your life for it. It really interferes with your life. And you're I would never let it take that space. I would never let it take the space away from all of these really important things, whether it's the fun with my friends or the traveling or the experiences or the strength that I feel when I perform, or I would never let it take that space again. And that. I think that takes years to get to, though. I think you can feel there are stages of better, but I really see people and they're I would not let it take that space again. But should you, should you go and start timing yourself on your runs every day and then entering it on Strava and comparing it with people? I mean, it could be not a great idea. Maybe you don't want to do that. Yeah. That's not something you do, but there's probably not that many things that you can't do. It's just there are a few, some people have a bit more of an obsessive brain, and so they get stuck on numbers. You want to start weighing yourself every day. I don't think that would, be a great idea. I'm not saying you go right back into an eating disorder, but I think you need to understand the vulnerabilities and respect them.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
So you may be, I don't know if this is probably not right or controversial or something, but I think of it a bit like alcoholism or certain addictions, where there are some people who can then after time have a drink and they're fine and whatever, and then there's some people but it's again that behavior, that thing that happens along with the drink, or
Sure, but they probably still have to limit the amount they drink, right? So it's more about limits. Some people, the limit is none, I'll never. And some people, I can go this far. So I can time myself, but I can't, I can run a marathon and I can do my times, but there's a certain point at which I'm going to start to get a bit too obsessive about this. There's a limit at which you just have to respect, and everyone's limit is going to be different. I don't think it's controversial. I think it feels like an addiction to people. I think it feels like that. I know that the research, does say that that it is different in a lot of ways, but it feels addictive to people, the eating disorder, for sure. And that's why you see even the AA model where you're not alone in it, you get support. Unfortunately, we're much more left alone in the eating disorder, much more secluded, much more, that can be difficult.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, not cool, but yes, that makes total sense. Let me grab my phone one more time and just make sure that I am not leaving anyone out.
Do you want to talk about the differences in treating athletes from the general population? Or
oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely.
That would be like the one thing that like maybe we, could be interesting.
So one of the questions is it different to treat athletes? I guess I kind of just assumed that it was just the sports dietitian that was different, but I'm sure there are other things. So how is it different to treat an athlete who has an eating disorder, especially someone in a field where like the body shape or the movement of the body, there's not an objective, like, football players, it's like the score, how many touchdowns, I don't know football, but like how many things do you win? But for us, for people in dance, gymnastics, these things, there's also an aesthetic component. So how is it different to treat us than it would be to treat another?
Yeah. So there's various different components with athletes that you want to be aware of. So you mentioned, having the sports dietitian involved, that's one of them. There are a few types of sports where you sort of have to understand maybe why they're more susceptible to eating disorders, like ones where it's like acro-artistic, or there's often an aesthetic component, but also sometimes and there's judgment sometimes in those sports based on how you look as you're performing, which can be really tough for people. But there's other sports like weight category sports where it's really important to understand, like how they use the scale and, what the weight category means for them and how they eat before and after. Like that is really important.
So Jodie is talking about things like wrestling would be an example, right? Where they have to like make weight, or they have to stand on a scale right before they compete.
Exactly.
Well, not right before, and if they're over a certain weight, they can't compete. So
weight category sports could be martial arts. It could be could be various different things. And then some sports, which I think this overlaps a bit, but where lightness is like helps it running. Let's say some people, they say it helps, or it's thought to have helped. And for some people it does. And listen, I don't get into that, but I understand that sometimes there's a desire to lose weight in cycling, or, whether it really helps performance or not, I try not to get into, but just understanding the culture of the sport, first of all, is important. And I'd say if you're a psychologist that doesn't, just ask the questions, just ask the questions about the person's sport, because I think we underestimate the place that your sport or your art takes, your discipline takes in your life. It's huge, right? You're spending so much time doing this. It's a very important piece for us to understand and to get to know. And I think also to get your buy-in. It's like, you need to know that I'm going to understand that you're an athlete for you to trust me. And I'd say first and foremost, that's an important thing. And then there are other things that need to be adapted. Like traditionally, if you come in with an eating disorder and you're not an athlete, we might stop exercising if it completely. And,
interesting.
Oh yeah.
Don't you think that would make people more anxious though?
Well, it's because, yes, but of course it does, because you're taking away their compulsion, but it's very hard. Like it's a very sneaky one where you'll see that exercise is still the way they're holding on to control often. And so, I think there's a gamut of ways that people deal with this, and some people don't take it away completely. Some people just say, okay, we really need to make sure it's not compulsive, so let's put it on a schedule. But understanding what your training is to you and how that training is, and because sometimes, what training is for performance versus what the eating disorder wants to do. So I can catch like, wait a second, that extra after your training, that extra yoga session, is that performance related or is that eating disorder? Like you have to do this. And I can sort of know what is performance related and what is maybe not actually enhancing your performance, but really more fear-based and anxiety and eating disorder. So those things are important. And then to understand your schedule, like you're away, sometimes you're in another country, you don't have access to certain foods, and just making sure that, somebody can help you manage that before you go. We don't want you to be flooded with anxiety. When you leave, we want to make sure that you can still follow your plan and that we have good goals for you, that you can actually challenge yourself without feeling totally overwhelmed by everything that's happening. So understanding, how your schedule plays into things and competitions and traveling, understanding how to talk with the performance team, the coaches, the athletic therapists, the people that are helping you perform, because they play such a crucial role in some athletes' life that we have to communicate with them more than we'd have to communicate with someone else. And sometimes that could be about comments they're making or behaviors they're doing, like weighing, like weigh-ins. But other times it's really about maybe this person can't remain in this weight category. How do we address that? How do we move? What are the options can we think about for this person? Or, what should we focus on instead of focusing on this, which is maintaining their disorder, or what can we sort of move to? So we really try to collaborate with that team. And understanding too that you have a little bit of leverage with an athlete, because performance is so important that actually you can use that, like to say like, hey,
sure,
your performance is actually suffering now. Like some people can't find reasons not to be sick, but I think for a performer, this is a really big reason not to be sick, and don't underestimate the power of that. So there's lots of things to understand about sport.
People can't find reasons not to be. That made me really sad. It is. Sorry.
It is.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, hey there. I just wanted to interrupt this interview real quick to just say one real quick little thing about myself, which is that I am not only the host of the Artist Athlete podcast. No. She is a businesswoman, and I run a whole company dedicated to the education and inspiration of circus artists. That goes from people who are just doing it, weekend warriors, as a hobbyist, recreationally, or if you're a professional, you've put in the hours and you need more resources, go to theartistathlete.com. There are a ton of recorded workshops, online manuals and ebooks, everything you could possibly need from me and from some guests on this show about everything from nutrition to training your shoulders to really specific aerial moves that you need to master. Again, theartistathlete.com. And just because you went there from listening to this podcast, use code PODCAST and get 15% off your entire purchase. That's right. Theartistathlete.com. Use code PODCAST at checkout for 15% off your entire purchase. And have a great day. Back to the episode. Wow. Okay. But we have a reason, which is our athletic endeavor,
Yeah, that made it hard when it was taken away from some people, right? During COVID.
Totally. Yeah. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
For sure. Do you find gender to be a component of disordered eating? Yes.
Of course.
She's nodding her head.
Yeah. I mean,
Jodie's eyes, you guys can't see it, but her eyes just got really big and she was like eagerly nodding her head.
But it's also a misconception, right? That only girls suffer from eating disorders. But yeah, in the general population, it tends to be sort of a 90 to 10 split, 90% female. I think that's probably inching, and males are inching their way in a bit more. Unfortunately, they're growing in numbers because aesthetic ideals are being more heavily imposed on them, or more prevalent in that. But in athletes, it's hot, like the ratio is a bit closer, because there are all these other reasons,
right,
like weight category or performance. I think it's going to be enhanced by losing weight, or the aesthetic component of being judged. I mean, really the fear of being judged is one of the hugest things. It's one of the biggest parts. So there's definitely a closer ratio. And I think it's a little bit, sometimes it's harder for the males to reach out for help because they feel like it's a woman's female disorder. So as much as, yes, the ratio still is that there's a lot more, females to males. Males are struggling, probably more so now, definitely more so in sport or performing arts, where there are really these other reasons that contribute. And we want to kind of minimize or the any stigma that would be associated with that, so that they can reach out for help and support as well.
Right. Yeah. Because I'm just thinking about the self-awareness component, and it's almost like this double-edged sword where, because we all assume that females are more likely to develop eating disorders because of the numbers in the general population, that even the awareness that male-bodied people can suffer from this or really have it impact their performance isn't as broadly known, I guess.
No. Yeah. And that might permit people, I think there is a raised awareness now, where coaches or teachers, or they try to, maybe not make comments, and understanding that pertains to men as well, to males as well, to anyone, to any gender, anything that you're, that it's across the board, it's an issue. It's not just something, that's stereotypically female.
Someone asked about the long-term effects on, this person specifically asked about bulimia, but I would say eating disorders in general, like if it goes undiagnosed, untreated, you mentioned athletic performance starts to suffer. What are the other kind of detrimental things? Not to scare people out there, but the question was asked, and I think it's worth kind of noting the importance of getting treatment for this.
I'd say one of the, maybe especially for athletes, one of the things that I would say is important to understand is that first, what I usually like to tell people is, listen, once you recover, you're gonna be okay. Most things all go back to normal. Like your body's very, most people can go back, they can have kids, etc. There is a, little risk though, I don't know if you talk a lot about sort of relative energy deficiency syndrome in sport, but this is, where you're sort of under fueling and you have these issues. And so things like osteoporosis, or those are things that you might want to be a bit more careful about. So you don't want to go, untreated. And that doesn't just mean in people who are underweight. So I actually didn't mention this, and I really want to, which is that especially in athletes, most of the time, even if you have more of an anorexia type disorder, people are not actually typically underweight because their physique is so different. And there are groups of people that we shouldn't call atypical anorexia, but it sort of is, where it's like, you're not going to be underweight in the way that you think you need to be sick, but you're underweight for your body. You're underfueled. You're not menstruating. You're in energy deficiency. And so one of the things we say is like, we don't want you to take the pill and just get your menstruation back. We want you to get your menstruation back, because it's important that you're fueled and that you're energized. I wouldn't, want to scare people about long-term effects, but I would say we really don't want to minimize the symptoms. And we do want to it is important that your body's not in energy deficiency, that it's fueled properly, especially for athletes and performers.
So the body is resilient. It can bounce back when it gets the treatment it needs.
Right. We don't want to mask it or cover it up or hide it. We want to get the treatment that it needs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that this is maybe a question for a dietitian. Someone asked, is sugar really evil? is sugar really? There's so much to unpack even in that question for you.
I feel like you want to answer it already.
I do. I just want to answer. I already know this. Well, I mean, like, is sugar evil? Like, what do you? Okay, believing that any food is evil, I would say, is probably the more pointed thing to ask about. Or why do you believe that any food would be evil?
I mean, it's understandable. Let's say you feel really out of control over something. It's understandable that in order to like want to find control, you might want to think, okay, well, if I cut out all sugar, then I'm going to be okay. Like, it's really understandable that people want to find solutions to what feels like a really out of control problem. But no, that's not the solution. It's just to cut out, sugar, and sugar is definitely not evil. I mean, of course it has its limits. It's like, is alcohol evil? I mean, some people might say yes, but I think they have their limits sometimes. So what else is like, there's a certain amount of sugar that's super fun. Like, sugar is amazing, right? Like, we love sugar. Look at kids. If sugar was evil, like, they just love it. But there's a certain amount of sugar after which you get like a big tummy ache and you feel bad. So there's just a limit there with like, and sometimes that's really hard for people when they're caught in this so much. It feels much easier to go black and white, just like, no sugar, that's the solution. And really the solution is like working back to understand what your limits are. And once you've worked back to a safe place, listen, there are some people who decide to make choices for themselves because they feel better. I don't know if it's eating less sugar or being a vegan, and I don't have any judgments about how you want to be best, as long as it's like, as long as you're doing this out of value and this really what feels good for you. And I would doubt that, you'd have zero sugar, but I mean, because sugar is just,
it's like impossible to avoid.
But
it's in everything, guys.
It's also, people want to jump from disordered eating often to like their best diet, their Thrive diet. And I'm like, we have to like work our way back to a really safe place and a really stable place. And from there, then you're going to learn what your body likes and what's best for you. And then I hope that you find the absolute best way that you want to feed yourself, and no one will be able to tell you what that is but you. But we can't just jump there. That's not going to happen because there's too much anxiety. There's too many obsessions. There's too much fear. You're too stuck. And so we just have to work through kind of what we might call like a more normal, stable place where we probably put all foods in there. And then you can decide after that,
what feels good.
What feels good for you. Yeah. We just don't want it to be, oh, I'm scared of it. I can't have it because I can't control it. It's more, I can make a choice. I'm in charge. I get to make the choice.
I would love to hear, this all makes me think, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it, because you did do some research in obesity, and that, because that is also, the obesity epidemic is also a thing that is true. But how do you kind of deal with that criticism that this intuitive eating, this there are no bad foods, kind of creates a culture of permissiveness around unhealthy eating, or the opposite effect, because I think that that's a criticism. And I question the validity of the criticism myself, but like, I would love to hear your thoughts on like, what is that? What's going on?
Right. If I like step into talking about obesity, I might take another whole hour, because it's just, I'm so passionate about.
Thank you for speaking for even this long, and listeners, thank you for listening in. I knew that this was going to be big for a lot of people, so I'm kind of over
it's
time,
really, but I will say a few things because you brought it up. Yes. It's really something that's very misunderstood. And what I'd say first of all is, in working with this, and if you go on the Canadian Obesity Network, it's a wonderful, wonderful way to understand more obesity. So what we try to, is that not to judge people based on what they look like. You do not fully know how somebody's eating based on what they look like. Because once you have gained a certain amount of weight for whatever reasons, whether it was, childhood habits or depression or whatever, it is extremely hard to lose that weight and keep it off. And like somebody, you have some leeway to let's say lose weight, but not as much as you would like to. And so someone could be doing their optimal lifestyle, and you might think that they're overweight. And so I'd say first thing is like the judgment is killer. It's so hard for people. It's so hard for people. It makes it so hard, and it makes it even harder to do the healthy things. Because of course, for everyone, eating disorder, or if you're not eating disordered, but you've gained some weight, and what we want is for you to find a healthy way to feed your body that incorporates some fun foods, and you're satisfied, and you can still go out with your friends, but you feel good. And so in obesity, they call this your best weight. It's like the weight at which you might be the healthiest for what you can be, but still have a satisfying life. Like you don't have to just like restrict everything, because then it's, because sometimes you'll see when people wait, you ask them what they're eating, it's like a piece of chicken with vegetables, and there's no way that you can sustain this. There's no way that it's not fair. And so they, I'd say that it's not about whether it's permissive is not the deal. There's always limits on things. It's not like, we should just let you eat whatever you want. It's like, no, but intuitive eating, the idea is that you will trust your body. You will satisfy your body, you will eat, but you will also respect that your body also wants nourishing foods. It wants to be healthy. It needs to feel good. It needs to feel, let's say, fit or strong or whatever it is that's important to you. Hopefully you have some exercise or something fun you do with your body that makes you want to be able to move it well and move it quickly, or walk up a mountain or travel or do something fun. And so hopefully that you can find that balance where, yes, it's about eating fun foods, but it's also about nourishing your body in like the healthy way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
It does. I just kind of want to check myself in this, because something that I kind of comfort myself with is that, like, because I am at a normal weight, or I've kind of found my weight, is that it's actually, if you are an intuitive eater or someone who gives yourself permission and not be so anxious, it is actually quite hard to gain that kind of weight also, because at some point it's just not comfortable to eat that much.
That, yes. So we would say that you're at like your set point, and that's why I say once people have gained weight, it might be for various reasons that they gained the weight. I don't think we need to judge. There's reasons why people gain weight. They have so many things going on. Maybe they had kids and a stressful job and they sort of lost the capacity. There are so many reasons why it could happen. It could be habits. It could be from childhood. But you're right. Many people, if they haven't gained that weight, their body will be in a comfortable point where it will sort of want to stay where it is, which we say is like your set point. And at that point, you have much more leeway than you think to eat a bit more sometimes, to be sick and still be okay. Like you have that leeway, and your body, your metabolism will also sort of adjust to kind of like sort of stay there. It sort of wants to stay in that range, but it's not like one number. It's maybe like a 5, 10 pound range, right? Where you're like, okay, I feel good here. And mostly you'll know because you don't have to be all anxious and preoccupied. So sometimes my old supervisor would use the analogy of like a styrofoam boat and on water. And he'd say, well, the boat is like, up and down on these waves, and your weight will vary up and down, and, your water retention, and you go on vacation and then you get sick. And if you try to put it under, it's like you have to hold it there. It's styrofoam. It wants to pop back up. And so if you're holding it, that's like the preoccupation. You have to like hold it and hold it and hold it and hold it and think about it. Now, how do you get your weight? You can get your weight up through some, but you're right. It's not that easy. But also I don't want to put any judgment on why it happens, because it can happen easy for people, for various reasons. Yeah.
But I would say, and maybe I'm thinking about like performance level athletes. I mean,
right.
I don't know. It would be very difficult to do if you are training every day and you're under the conditions that a lot of us are under. The fear of obesity, I think, is kind of a
right. It's like it's sort of irrational. Like you don't need to be that scared of it. Yeah, it needs to be somewhat of a slight self-awareness. If you completely disconnect from yourself, you don't. But you're saying you meditate every day. Like if you're meditating every day, you have self-awareness.
Yeah, sometimes a little too much.
Oh, I know. I get it. Too much self-awareness can be killing too.
Self-awareness. I'm like, God, can I just like tune out for a minute and like not try to opt?
I know.
But Well, Jodie, I do want to, I know we've already gone so long, but what are you working on now that let people know like where they can find you, what the projects, what resources are out there that you can provide?
Thank you for asking that. So I've been working, like I said, I have a wonderful team clinic here at Connect Psychology, but I've been working for the past 10 years with athletes and artists, and what my partner in that, Alexia Demacar, she's a sports nutritionist or dietitian, what we sort of realize is that like there are too many athletes and performers that we've been treating. And actually, there are a lot of things that can be done to help them in the training environment. So the first thing was that if the health professionals around them or the performance professionals, so it could be the physiotherapists, the dietitians, the coaches, are more aware of eating disorders, both in terms of how they can prevent them, but also the red flags, and so how they can detect them early, that would be super helpful for the athletes. And so we've set up these training programs for professionals, whether that's dietitians or psychologists, mental prep consultants or coaches, where we help them understand prevention and also screening and management, just like how do you speak to somebody when you know that there are red flags? What are the red flags? How do you create a treatment team that you can send people to? How do you speak with that treatment team? So we do those trainings. And I think this would help so much, because my ideal is, well, first that we prevent them, of course, but if there are eating disorders, that they get detected early so that performance is not suffered, and we can treat them while they're still training, and we can really help them work through that quickly. And then second, we offer mentoring to the psychologists and the dietitians who are actually doing the treatment. And then third, we offer consulting to schools and federations and organizations who want to figure out how to have a safe support system for eating and body image. So really put in from, we have a sort of maturity scale with various different domains, from how to manage crises to how to work on prevention and education to how to build a culture that is empowering and safe for the athletes, and hopefully, build those systems so that this isn't as much of an issue. And also it's, this is an at-risk population. So there's a bit of a maybe responsibility to understand that, but it's also an opportunity to be role models or to create safe and empowering environments, because sport can also be a protective factor.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't have to be a risk factor. It can be a protective factor for eating disorders. There's so much good that can come out of that. So that's what we're doing right now. We're really excited about it.
And what's the name of the company?
Thank you. Dare to Fuel Performance. So
Dare to Fuel Performance. Amazing.
Yes.
And all of the information to access Jodie, I will put in the show notes, probably on my Instagram. You will see it. You'll see it all over the place, because this is definitely something that I feel like the Artist Athlete as a company also needs to take a part in helping inform people about. And I think it's so cool what you're doing.
Well,
awesome.
I do love that you're
you.
posting about it. And I liked your body positivity versus neutrality post as well. I thought that was really cool.
Oh my gosh. We could dive into so much.
I'm just happy that, you are being a role model. So it's really important to know that. Yeah.
Doing my darndest.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jodie, for coming on today, taking all of the time. Actually, can I ask you one more question that I ask at the end of every episode, which is, what advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career?
To myself at the beginning of my career?
Yeah, like if you had a time machine and you could take yourself back and just be like, hey, Jodie, your life would be a lot easier if you just did this. Like, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, that's so hard.
I know.
It's so hard. Let me see. There's two pieces I want to give, but I'm going to go with
you can give both.
Okay. One of them is just surrounding yourself with the people that have similar values, and, in what you're doing is just so empowering, and just focusing on that. is so nice to feel like part of a team, whether it's the beautiful therapists here who just want to help people, or my partner, or the people who just want to help our mission and cause. Like, it's such a wonderful thing. And so I don't think I knew that. I think I just, wanted to, you just get out and you want to please all the people. It's more like, you got to choose the people that you think are going to be best to work with, for you. Doesn't mean that, and I guess secondly would be also wanted to do all the things. And, it's like, well, you can't do all the things well. So maybe kind of sort of at the same time, listen, there is a moment where you just want to learn. So I don't want to take that away, but there is a moment to kind of say, okay, well, you can't be a specialist in all the things. You got to really figure out what you're going to be a specialist, like what you're going to do. And so there's time to learn, which you want to take that opportunity, but then there's a time to just understand that you're going to keep learning on those things, but your specialty will maybe be a bit, will be something smaller.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jodie.
My pleasure. It's been fun.
That was my interview with Dr. Jodie Richardson. I have to confess something, you guys. I've been sitting here procrastination scrolling for the past 15 minutes because I've been so scared to record this outro because I really want to do this interview, this topic, my community, the justice that you all deserve, and give you the information and the wrap-up you all deserve. Jodie was kind enough to email me with a whole bunch of resources, which I'm going to put in the show notes of this episode and part 1, so that if you are a person who is struggling, if you don't have access, if you want to speak with someone but can't quite find them yet and want to begin the journey of recovery, there are online resources available. There are things you can do now, but I do recommend that you enlist the support of a professional at some point because, well, trust me, eventually you're going to hit a wall. And it can be really tough. But I am out here for you. Jodie is out here creating resources for us. There is a world of help. Don't be afraid to ask for it, please. The end of this interview, Jodie said something that really has stuck with me. And it's about how empowering Circus is. And I've seen this in my own life and the lives of my friends and my students and even the people I look up to, how finding Circus or finding that strength or building that flexibility or that unique thing that was theirs was such a completely transformative experience and gave them so much more agency over themselves. And that's what athletics and art can do in great circumstances. So it is a tragedy when something like disordered eating comes in and kind of ruins the party by taking away that joy. Don't let this take away your joy. You deserve to do what you love and to love what you do. So check out the resources in the show notes. They're all from Jodie Richardson. And if you want more information on me, the artist athlete, you can go to my Instagram. I'm at _artist_athlete. I'm on TikTok at _artist_athlete. My Facebook is The Artist Athlete. My website is theartistathlete.com. And if you want to support the podcast, go to patreon.com/theartistathlete. That's the place to do that. And hit subscribe. Subscribe to this podcast, and you will get new episodes every week, freshly delivered on Monday morning, all ready for your drive to the studio, your time to put on makeup, even though probably on Monday you have the day off. But it'll be there for you, and I'll be there for you, and I can't wait. So subscribe to the Artist Athlete podcast, and I'll talk at you next week, friends, fans, and foes. The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Hi, my name is Noah and I do hand balancing. Hi, my name is Woody and I do Leo walk. Thank you for listening to the Artist Athlete podcast.
Hi, I'm Freya. You can hear my whole story in episode 50 of the Artist Athlete podcast, but I'm here to tell you about something else that I do. I'm a qualified health and nutrition coach. I help people with sleep and body confidence, among other things. You can see everything I have to offer at wildguidance.com or follow me on Instagram at wildguidance.
Hi everyone, I'm Dominique, a ground acrobat, trapeze artist, and coach, currently bringing circus to the extremely cold but very beautiful Northern Ontario, Canada. Circus has changed my life, and I'm so grateful to everyone in this community. Find me on Instagram at DomUpsideDown or my website, domupsidedown.com.
Aloha! My name is Beth Russell, and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete Podcast, straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space, and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and swing and rope by night. I really, really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm Patreon.
Hello all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the cities, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.
Hey there, artists and athletes. This is Andy Smith, owner and artistic director at Saltaire Circus School in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And I want to thank you for contributing to the Artist Athlete podcast. If you ever find yourself down in Florida, come check us out. Whether you're an artist, athlete, or someone ordinary just looking to be extraordinary, we got a place for you.